think that it was easier being the cancer patient than it was being the carer or the loved one surrounding the cancer patient? Because for us it's simple, isn't it? Chances are, if you're like me, I was told I was going to die. So there's either an acceptance of that fact or choosing to ignore it and find another way. It was rather black and white. But for those loved ones, it was a matter of them having to address the unknown of what life was going to be like without us. Plus, meanwhile, focused on looking after us. So, as a cancer patient, you're being ferried around from appointment to appointment, going through treatments, coming home, being looked after. So your loved one's there, taking the whole responsibility of the household and childcare, and probably holding down a full-time job as well. So yeah, to any carers out there, spouses, I take my hat off to you. I really do believe that. I can't imagine what it must be like. And I don't know that the same said in the reverse for the person with cancer, but I still feel that it's harder for you guys. So well done. Thank you. When it comes to emotional well-being, when it comes to the NHS, it's not immediately offered to you. It's expected to be picked up by a lot of cancer charities offering counselling, for example. And even then, it's mainly for, again, the patient. And if you're lucky, you're also offered it as a carer. So meanwhile, emotional well-being, it's so essential that this is taken care of side by side along treatment. And I'm sure the evidence would suggest that those who are emotionally cared for have better outcomes. So yeah, my husband was dumped with the whole remit. I was in bed for every 2 or 3 weeks of only 2 rounds of chemo that I had. If I'd had the full treatment of 6 rounds of chemos followed by radiotherapy, it would have pretty much taken up the whole of a year. And of course, he also had the emotional welfare of our 11-year-old daughter at the time to look after, as well as running the house, which I did all of that before. And so all of this was suddenly upon his lap. So luckily, for those that don't know, I was registered at hospice and offered a lot of emotional support, and so was he, and we took it up. Now, the main thing that I took up quite early on was the marriage, the couples counselling side of it, because I was determined that in order to survive, I had to leave my marriage. For a long time, years before the diagnosis, I'd felt trapped and unhappy within my marriage. And whilst there would be lots of arguing and things, all of our financial assets were tied up in property, and so just a divorce and leaving him really wasn't the best solution all around. It wouldn't have been a win-win scenario either way. But suddenly, whatever time I had left, I knew that I wanted to live life to the full, being happy as much as possible, doing whatever it took. And in order to express that, I needed to do it in the safety, the security of a professional counselling environment where I could literally offload everything. Yeah, there would be anger, there would be tears, but it was handled, it was maintained in a way that it certainly wouldn't have been if I'd done that just at home. Oh, just the thought of it now, it would have been devastating over and above the effects of cancer, and at the end of the day, the 11-year-old daughter at home would have borne most of the repercussions of that. So, moving on, I got the most wonderful counsellor. She was brilliant. And of course, she specialised in cancer, being at the hospice. And I'd highly recommend whatever counselling you have, do choose somebody that's experienced with cancer, because they know everything that you're going through, all of the loophole, everything. Because yeah, cancer sends shockwaves through a relationship. It has a way of magnifying all the cracks, all the problems that were there before in ways that you can't possibly imagine. It just heightens all of your sensitivities, or everything down to the core. You'll find just gets exposed. And maybe you're lucky enough to be in a situation where exposing all of these cracks means that you can start to mend and actually enjoy your relationship at a deeper level that you never did before. It can help you make important decisions, like maybe working less, spending more time together, perhaps choosing a project to work on together to deepen those ties that will give you more of a sense of the future together. And of course, building a future is what it's all about. For me, my future was living in a flat that we owned down the road, where I asked for the tenants to leave so that I could start all over again. So for my husband, the loss wasn't just about losing me, it was a loss of our income as well. From his perspective, it was lose, lose, lose. His pride, his masculinity, everything was opened up to the core in these meetings. And so, yeah, there's going to be big stuff out there for you too, I'm sure. Maybe it's not your partner, it's somebody else. For example, my relationship with my mother came to the fore. I would discover early on that call after call I'd end up in tears, because they're simply, she didn't have the capacity to deal with my illness and her own emotions. She wasn't able to be there in the way that I needed her to be, to care and to nurture me. And so for a while I did say, Mum, don't call me, I can't cope with this at the moment. Moving on, everything was fine. That was just for the short initial period of shock when I was come to terms with everything. But my cancer did have an impact on her. I did suggest that she went for counselling through the hospice like I did, that was available for all members of the family. But she chose to deal with it in her own way. And sadly, a few years later, she had her own cancer diagnosis, which, touch wood, everything's fine now. She had to go through surgery and radiotherapy. But I hear this so much of loved ones perhaps not being able to deal with the emotional side of the family's diagnosis. And if that's you, if you're feeling that you're not being seen, and there's a little voice that's saying, what about me, what about me? Do please, please, please get some emotional support, because I don't want you to be the next one lining up for chemotherapy. It really doesn't have to be that way. Get the emotional side sorted out, open. Just let go of it all and let the dust settle, to just be still with what's really happening in a good way, rather than feeling that everything's on your shoulders, because it doesn't have to be. And then last but not least, my daughter. She just started secondary school. She was 11 and she really didn't want to go to big school. She was finding it difficult. She wasn't settling in well. And as soon as I had to share with her the news about the cancer, just the fact that I was going to have chemotherapy, she wasn't given the full extent of how serious it was. Surprise, surprise, she didn't want to go to school anymore. She dug her heels in, she refused to go, and that was it. I homeschooled her for a year, but that wasn't before the school had tried their hardest. They'd given her the school form of counselling, which was really more pastoral care. It wasn't qualified counselling. It didn't do anything for her. In actual fact, they said if she didn't want to open up, then there was no point in going there. Fortunately, we were able to go back to the hospice and get her some proper counselling through the counsellor specialising in cancer there. So what she did, mind you, find very useful was a website here in the UK called Kooth. That's Kooth. I should say that it did very, very quickly become very oversubscribed. I don't know what it's like now, but as a teenager, a young 11-year-old anyway, it suited her more to be able to go online and type, chat, everything that was going on for her without having to be seen or heard in the literal sense. So I know that she was on that website quite a lot, getting support. So yeah, if you've got a young person, you might want to look that up. And, well, moving on, I did move into the flat. My husband and I still have a very amicable relationship. We talk and see each other quite a lot. So that all worked out to everybody's benefit. My mother's fine. She's healing. In actual fact, I'm taking her to the hospital next week, where hopefully everything's going to be fine. And yeah, Esme, she's sitting her GCSE. She managed to get a place in a Steiner school, which was much more well suited to her. And yeah, everything's moved on. But I must stress, I cannot imagine what the path would have looked like without the wonderful professional guidance of a counsellor. And if anybody out there works in the NHS and works within oncology, I cannot stress strongly enough how this really needs to be an ancillary therapy running alongside all forms of treatment. Because I'm proof of the pudding. Get out there for you and your loved ones and get all the support going to make sure that you heal in the best way possible. So please, if you found this video interesting, please can I suggest that you do subscribe. It's free, guys, it's free. You don't have to pay for anything, but it will boost how many more people see my videos. So please subscribe, maybe press the button so that it goes ping the next time my video comes out. And I'll say thank you to you now for doing that. See you next week.